Hello, my name is John E. Richards, and I'm 61 years old. By the time of this story, I was 33. Me and my brothers, Jake, 29, and Jimmy, 27, but everybody calls him Jim. And we are big game hunters. And for those of you who don't know, big game hunters specialize in hunting large animals. But anyways, we had just came home from Nepal. We were hunting this man-eating leopard that was over there causing trouble. It was a tough bastard. I would have died if it wasn't for our dog, Buck. He's a large Boerval. After we killed the leopard and received the payment from the Nepalian government, we went back home to Fort Worth, Texas. When we got home, we decided to hit up this local bar before stopping at our mama's house. When we got there, the bar was packed. It seemed like almost half the town was there. Me and my brothers walked up to the front of the bar. That is where Hopper, a good friend of our father and the owner of this fine establishment, greeted us.
How you boys doing? What can I get for you today?
I told him 3 Red Bulls, please. Then he said,
All right, coming right up.
He grabs our drinks and hands it to us. Then he asks,
So what are you strangers doing out here?
Jake then says,
We just got back from Nepal and is just visiting our mama and to wind down a little bit.
Some guys overhearing our conversation walked up to us and started asking us questions like how big was the leopard and how long did it take us to take it down. Jim, always being the exaggerator, said,
The leopard was as big as a lion and as fierce as a tiger, and we wouldn't have been able to take it down if it wasn't for my expertise.
Then Jake says,
Shut up, you idiot. This is how it really went.
Me and Harper just laughed in amusement. Then I turned and looked up at the TV and saw breaking news. Bigfoot is killing people in Southern California. I then asked Hopper to turn up the TV. He did, and here's what they had to say.
In Southern California, Bigfoot has been spotted and is now killing people. There has been 7 confirmed victims, but the cops has estimated that there could be way more. The state has offered $10,000 to whoever capture him, dead or alive.
I then tapped Jake on the shoulder and said, Brother, look. He turns and looks at me. Then he looks at the TV. He then slightly laughs at me and says,
Brother, that's just probably some fake news. It's probably just a large gorilla that escaped from the zoo. Some very hairy guy. Or a guy in a gorilla outfit. Plus, that's only $10,000. That's less than what we make on an average hunt.
Yes, that is true. But think about it, Jake. If it is real, we'll become very stinking rich. Not only will we get the $10,000, but if we capture it alive, we can sell it to a zoo. And if we kill it, we can sell it to a museum. And we can make millions off of it. Plus, our reputation will go through the roof. Everybody will want to hire the guys who captured the elusive Bigfoot. Jim, overhearing our conversation, walks over to us and asks us, What are y'all talking about? I tell him everything I told Jake. Jim then says,
Well, I think that's a great idea.
Jake then looks at us both and says,
Come on, you two. Think. If we are gonna hunt Bigfoot, we're gonna need a lot of equipment. And that's gonna take a lot of money. And to be honest, I'm not willing to waste that much money on something that may not even be real.
You're right, brother. That will cost a lot of money. But think about it. If we capture Bigfoot, not only will we make back all the money that we spent on this, we'll win that back and more. Jake just stands there looking at the both of us, clearly still not too thrilled about the idea, until Jim finally says,
Come on, my brother. What's life without a little risk?
Jake doesn't say anything for a few more seconds, and then he finally says,
Alright then, I'll do it.
I then tapped him on the shoulder and said, That a boy. Then I gave Hopper the money, and we started heading out. Some people tried to stop us and asked us to continue the story about the leopard, but I told them we had to go. Me and Jake hopped in the truck, while Jim hopped in the back with the hunting equipment and Buck, and we headed to our mama's house. to wind down a little bit and to get the necessary equipment to hunt Bigfoot. It felt nice being back home again, chilling with Mama and having some of our homemade cooking. Also, me and my brothers took this time to enjoy ourselves. We went fishing, we played football, and went swimming in the nearby lake. But all good things must come to an end. After getting the necessary equipment to hunt Bigfoot, it was time for us to leave Mama's house. Before we left, Mama handed me Dad's old hat and told me to wear it for good luck. I ain't the type of guy to usually believe in those sort of things, but for her sake, I wore it. I then asked her if she could drive us down to the airport, and she gladly obliged. Me and Ma got into the truck, while Jim, Jake, and Book got in the back with the hunting equipment. We got to the airport, we each gave Ma a hug, and right before I was about to walk away, Ma grabbed my arm and said,
"Take care of your brothers."
I turned and put my hand on hers, and I promised her that I would. Then we turned around and walked into the airport. We checked in and showed them our special passports to carry guns on the plane. Then we put Buck in a large kennel that we got for him, and then we sat down. Jim then said to me,
I can't believe you finna go hunt Bigfoot.
I laughed slightly and said, yeah, me too, brother, me too. When we landed in California, we got our luggage and Buck. Then I called an Uber to a motel. I booked us 3 different rooms because there's no way I'm sleeping in the same room with those. Jim snores too loud and Jake has a farting problem when he sleeps. At the motel, the front desk worker gave us our respective keys and we all started heading towards our designated rooms. I then told my brothers to set an alarm clock for 6 in the morning so we can get out bright and early. Then I let Buck do his business and I entered my room. The alarm goes off at 6 o'clock on the dot, marking the beginning of the day. I wash up, I put on my clothes, I grab my stuff and tell Buck to come outside and we wait out there for my brothers. A few minutes later, my brothers come out of their rooms and we all walk up to the front of the motel and give back our room keys. Then we go to the cafeteria the motel have and get us some breakfast. Then I call up an Uber to take us near a nearby camping spot that Bigfoot was spotted near. We walked 2.5 miles into the forest before stopping at this cliffside with a waterfall. I said this looks like a good place to set up camp. We set up our tents and grab our equipment. We have a bag full of cameras, traps, and bait. I then said let's split up to cover more ground. Jake then sarcastically says,
Aye, Captain.
Jim doesn't say anything, just nods his head in agreement. I then hand everybody walkie-talkies and say use this if you see anything or you need anything. They take the walkie-talkies and we all go our separate ways. Old Buckaroo decided to go with Jim this time, which made me a bit jealous at first, but to be honest, it's for the best. He always seemed to get himself into trouble when me and Jake got around. I walked about 3 miles away from the camp and started setting down traps and cameras. Set down 3 cameras and 4 traps and placed bait on them. I did that about 5 times until I ran out of baits, traps, and cameras. I was about to turn back around and head back to camp when I noticed something. About 10 yards away from me, a large tree was completely uprooted from the ground. It was like something just completely ripped it out of the ground. Just sat there in shock for a few minutes, thinking what could have done something like this? Could it have been Bigfoot? No, it couldn't have been. There's no way he's this strong. As I was having these thoughts, my radio came on and Jake said,
Jack, are you there? Come in, Jack.
That snapped me out of my thoughts, and I grabbed my radio and responded, Yeah, I'm here. What's up? Jake then said,
Are you done setting up traps?
I responded, Yeah, I am. Jake responded,
I just wanted to check up on you. Me and Jim been sitting here waiting for you for a little bit and wanted to make sure you didn't get lost or nothing happened to you.
I then stared at the tree for a few more seconds. Then I told Jake for him and Jim to come down to my location. He said why, and I said because I found some damning evidence. After 15 minutes, Jim, Jake, and Buck came into view. I called out, Yo, over here. They turned and looked at me and started heading towards my location. Jake annoyingly said,
Okay, brother, what was this all about?
he didn't even get to finish his sentence before he saw the tree. They both just stood there in shock until Jim finally said,
What could have did this?
I said, I think it's Bigfoot. Jake then looked at me like I was crazy, then said,
Man, this is probably just machinery or something.
I then said, come on now, you idiot. Where was machinery at? He then said,
Somebody probably did it a long time ago.
that's when I said, don't no one rip a whole tree from the ground like that, Jake. Jimmy then says,
He's right.
Jake just looks at us both and doesn't say anything, then starts walking around the tree. And then he stops and says, guys, look. Me and Jim walk over to where he's at, and we see two large footprints in the mud. Jim then kneels down to examine it. He then says,
It's been here an hour ago.
I then call Buck over and say, come here, boy, come sniff this. He does. He starts barking and starts running down the bottom of the hill. We follow him for about a mile until he stops and starts sniffing around. I then say, damn it, we lost his trail. Next 3 weeks, there was no activity. Nothing on the cameras, and we even had Buck sniffing around. He couldn't find anything neither. Then finally, on the 4th week, while me and my brothers and Buck was out scouting, we came across the dead body of a man. He had his torso completely smashed in. You can kind of see his ribs sticking from out of his body. When we seen it, we all stared in shock and horror. Jim turned around and started throwing up, while Jake just looked away. Hearing Jim throw up knocked me out of my haze. I look over there at them. Jim was still throwing up, and Jake was still looking away. I asked them if they were okay. Jake says,
We'll be fine. Just go capture that monster. I'll stay with him.
notice there are some tracks on the ground. Bigfoot tracks. I say bingo. Come on, Buck, let's go. He follows me as we walk deeper into the forest. We follow the tracks for about a good 10 minutes before they just stop. It didn't jump really far to try to throw us off, and then the track started somewhere else. It didn't run around in circles to try to throw us off. They just stopped. I told Buck to come on, feeling defeated, and started heading back towards my brothers, when I heard a loud scream from Jake. When we heard that, me and Buck started sprinting towards my brother's location. I started screaming out their names. When I finally made it back to that spot, I couldn't believe my eyes. They were fighting Bigfoot. He looked to be about 8 feet tall and very muscular. It was very durable as well. We was pumping that thing full of bullets, and it just shrugged them off like it was nothing. Meanwhile, the entire time, the thing was swiping at us and trying to grab us. To our surprise, it had pretty slow attack speed. Plus, Buck was biting at his legs and his arms the entire time, providing a little distraction. Pretty easy for us to dodge and weave his attacks while pumping that thing full of lead. This went on for about 20 minutes before it got a lucky hit in on Buck, sending him flying across the clearing. That causes Jim to get momentarily distracted. That's all the time Bigfoot needed to grab him and throw him into a tree. I immediately stop fighting and run over to him to see if he's okay. On the other hand, still shooting at the monster, manages to get it in his eye. It screams out in pain with blood leaking from his wound as it runs into the forest. It was surprisingly fast given its slow attack speed. Once I reached Jim, I could immediately tell he was already dead. His back was completely broken and his face was completely devoid of color. I sat there and I started crying, can't believing that he's gone. Jake then walked up next to me. Once he realized he was dead, he also started crying. Then he started blaming me, telling me if I just would have listened to him, Jimmy would still be alive. That started making me cry even more, not because it hurt my feelings, but because it was true. This was all my fault. We both just sat there and cried for about 10 minutes. Then I heard Bigfoot roar. I looked out into the distance, knowing I had to finish this. I grabbed my gun, then I grabbed Jimmy's gun, and started heading towards the forest. Jake asked me where I was going. I said I'm going to finish this. Right before I entered the forest, I stopped by Buck. I could tell he was still alive, but he was definitely injured. I then put my hand on his head and said, "Don't worry, boy. I'm going to finish this for us." Then I gave him a kiss on his forehead and got up and started walking into the forest. I followed the blood trail it left behind. It was bleeding pretty badly, so I knew it wouldn't take much to kill it. I followed the trail for about a mile and it led to this cave. I pulled out my flashlight and I entered the cave. I only walked a few feet in when a boulder came flying at my head. Managed to dodge, but just barely. Then, not even a second later, Bigfoot came charging at me and tried to kick me, but I managed to block it with my gun. I got sent flying back several feet and I hit the ground hard. I coughed up blood and I felt like my entire body was broken. Then Bigfoot came out of the cave and jumped into the air, getting ready to land on me. I managed to dodge just in the nick of time and he hit the ground with a thud. I felt the ground shake beneath me. I managed to crawl to a nearby tree and use it to help myself stand up. My head was still spinning and I was completely delirious. Then all of a sudden I see Bigfoot charging at me, getting ready to kick me again. I used the tree to push off and get away. It kicks the tree so hard that it splinters and falls over. I then start shooting at it again. It started swinging at me again, but due to its blood loss, it was even slower now, which is the reason I was able to keep up in my delirious state. But that didn't last for long. It swung its arms at me and it was about to hit me, but I was able to block it with my gun, and this time the gun shattered. I hit the ground hard again, and this time I was so injured I wasn't even able to move. It started walking towards me and lifted its arms to finish me off. I thought this was the end before out of nowhere, Buck came and bit it on the shoulder. Jake then looks up at me and says,
Brother, are you okay?
I then looked up at him and weakly said, "You came back for me." Jake then says,
Of course, I can't let you have all the fun. Plus, you my brother. I would always come back for you.
I then smiled at him and then tried to get up, but I was too weak.
Whoa, whoa, whoa there, brother. Just sit down and let me handle the rest.
Jake said. He then turned and started heading towards Bigfoot and Buck. Shooting at Bigfoot while Buck was going at his feet again. They were doing this for about 5 minutes when Bigfoot finally went down. He just stares at Bigfoot for a few seconds, then he looks over at me and starts crying out in joy. I then weakly said, "Good job, brother, you did it." Jake then starts walking towards Bigfoot and says,
That's for my brother, you bastard.
he then walks up close to it, thinking it's dead. That's when it springs up and grabs Jake by the throat. That's when Buck springs into action, going to bite it, but it slaps Buck away, breaking his neck. It then gets up and rips Jake's body in half. I sit there in shock, can't believe in what just happened. I just lost another brother and my best friend, all in an instant. Then Bigfoot turns his attention to me and starts walking over towards me. I lay there, accepting that this is the end. But then I remember I still had Jim's rifle, tugging at my back, trying to get it off. Meanwhile, Bigfoot is slowly walking towards me. I got it off just in the nick of time as Bigfoot was about to grab me. I took the rifle and I shot his fingers off. It then roars out in pain, clutching at his hand, and with one well-placed shot, got it right in between his eyes. His brains go flying out the back of his head. It hits the ground, and I just stare at it for a moment. Then I use the rifle to get myself up and start heading towards the camping grounds we were first dropped off at. I then use their phone to call the cops. I tell them that me and my brothers and dog hunted down Bigfoot there in a few minutes, and I showed them Bigfoot and my brothers and dog's lifeless bodies. They then called an ambulance to treat my wounds. Once I got there, the doctor told me my ribs and my arm was broken and I had a severe concussion and I had to stay there for a little while. After 2 or 3 days, my mama showed up to the hospital. She looked tired and looked like she's been crying all day. But when she seen me, a big smile came across her face, and she ran over and gave me a big old hug. It hurt, but I allowed it. She then looked at me and said,
I'm so happy to see you, son.
I then started crying, and I said, I'm so sorry, Mama. I'm so sorry I wasn't able to bring them home. My mama then grabs me by my face and says,
No, don't apologize. It was not your fault. I know you did the best you could. They are in heaven now, with God and your father.
first time since they died, I allowed myself to cry. I allowed myself to feel the emotions. After a few days, the governor of California, along with a news reporter and a couple news anchors, he gave me my check. He congratulated me for killing Bigfoot. Then he asked me what I plan on doing with the body. I say I don't know. I'll figure it out. For 2 months, I finally got out, and I set out to do what I said I was going to do. I sold his body to this museum that offered me $10 million for it. With that money, I bought Mama a new house. I bought a house for my brother's ex-wife and his kids. And I used the rest of the money to buy myself a house, a big old property. Then I had Jim, Jake's, and Buck's bodies sent back home. Since Mama didn't want to sell our old house, I just had them buried in our old backyard. That's where they wanted to be buried anyway. I miss them every day. I wish they were still here to be able to see what we have accomplished. But since they not, I'ma make sure I live every single day how they would want me to live. Took up Jimmy's dream of wanting to go out traveling. I have been to 3 different countries now. I even found me a girlfriend throughout all this. Well, that's the end of my story for now. You all have a blessed day.